first of all, thank you very much, Nadia, for joining us today. I really appreciate you making the time. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me, guys. This is very exciting. So my name is Nadia. I am 28 and I live in London, and where I'm from, and I'm currently working as the head of marketing for Wingback, and I've been in marketing for it's been about 4 years now, just about. And Wingback is a small like e-commerce startup focusing on kind of the luxury side of men's accessories and products. So we do a range of stationery, wallets, and small things like that.
Nice, excellent, thank you very much. And so, whereabouts in London are you based?
So I'm currently based in East London. So I live in
Nice.
Bow, so kind of like near the Stratford area. But I
Oh, yeah,
grew
yeah.
up in kind of the central London area. So me moving to East London was like a big betrayal to my family. They were like, "Oh my God, it's so far away."
No, I know London. I actually lived in the south for about 12 or so years. I know the accent maybe doesn't suggest that, but I did. My brother actually lives in East London as well. He lives in Hackney, so I know it pretty
Yeah,
well.
so I'm nearby.
Yeah, nice, nice. And so where did you go to school? Was it in London?
Yeah, so I was born in London and I was here. I went to primary school here, and then when I was, I think around 9 or 10, I moved to Pakistan, which is where my mother's side of the family is from. And then I was there until it was time to go to university. So I spent a lot of my formative years out there in Karachi, and then at the age of 18, I went to the United States for university.
Nice,
So
amazing,
I was around the world quite a bit until I finished university and then moved back to London, which is where I've been since then.
amazing. And whereabouts in the US were you?
I was in Massachusetts, so just
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple of hours outside of Boston. So
Mhm.
I was just there for university. So I was living on campus, a very small campus, very beautiful. It's called Mount Holyoke College, very liberal arts. There was only about 3,000 students across the whole
Wow, very
campus.
small.
But I managed to explore a little bit of the US. So I spent quite a bit of time in Boston, in New York, and kind of in that New England area.
Nice. I actually know it quite well. I was in Boston and New York at Christmas time, so it was yeah. I've been before, but it's
Very
particularly
cold.
nice. Yeah, it was very cold. Yeah, I've got a 5-year-old son. It was -13, so that was pretty tricky to
Yeah.
navigate.
I thought the UK was cold, and then I think
Yeah,
one winter we had like a -24 night, and I was just like, What's the point?
it's just
Like,
ridiculous. Yeah,
what
yeah,
is
yeah,
this?"
yeah, totally. And kind of going back to your time at like high school and stuff. How did you do? Were you quite academic, or how did you find high school?
It was a weird one because I did quite well at school, and I loved school. I love learning, and I've always loved learning. But I was quite a cheeky, arrogant child as well. So that could cause some contention because sometimes I wouldn't do my schoolwork just because it was a bit of a middle finger to my teachers. Like just because I just didn't want to, and because I had like quite a bit of attitude when I was younger. So that caused some issues as well. But I was very bright and I loved reading and I actually like did well when I put my mind to it. But it was that
Mm,
kind of contentious, like, no, like I don't want to do what you tell me, sort of
okay.
thing, like sort of issue with authority that made it difficult sometimes. But overall, I loved like actually doing the readings and studying and learning things.
Right. And did you do well results wise? Did it go well?
I did. For the most part, I did pretty well. Once I got out of my like really angsty teenager phase, sometime like when I was like 14, 15, like you know how it is, like you just start, your priorities change and then you just stop studying at all. And then when I got a bit older, I started to take my studies a little bit seriously again.
Yeah.
And then because I kind of rediscovered what I enjoyed and what I liked doing, and I was able to like pick subjects that interested me. And so then in the end, everything worked out well. And then I was able to go to university with the grades that I got.
Ah, nice. And what did you study at uni?
So at uni, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer
Okay.
when I was younger, and I actually took a course at my first semester of uni called philosophy of law because I was like, oh, that sounds adjacent to what I want to do. Took the class, fell in love with philosophy, and which is not something I ever thought would interest me. And I was like, this is it actually. So it was I double majored in philosophy and political science because I was in America I moved there in 2015. So the first Trump election was happening, and just because of everything that was going on, I got really interested in politics. And when you live in America, there's so much kind of political stuff going on
Yeah,
all the time. So I just got really interested in that. So I ended up doing that, and my dissertation ended up being about like the philosophy of politics and like modern warfare and things like that, which I'm still really interested in.
nice. And so, kind of fast forwarding past that kind of higher education and stuff, like, did you work during your studies, or did you were you
Yeah,
just kind of
I
focusing on?
well, it was part of my scholarship package that you had to work on campus. So my
Okay.
very first job, like official job ever, was working in the dining hall at university, which it's really funny because it kind of like mirrors how I am now. I really loved working and getting paid for working. So I would take so many shifts to the point where my studies would actually suffer. And then my mother would have to be like, Nadia, you're not there to work.
Yeah, yeah.
You're there
You're
to
not
get
there
your
to work in the
degree.
dining hall. You're there to study.
Yeah, she was like, stop skipping class to go and work in the dining hall. Like that's not, but yeah, that was my first job. So did a couple of years of that, and then picked up various jobs kind of on campus. And yeah, and then when I was back home in the UK, I started bartending, kind of during my summer holidays and winter holidays. So that was my first official paying job.
Nice. And how did you find like hospitality? Has that helped like give you a bit of a grounding into where you are now? Did it help having those years doing that?
I think it should be mandatory for everyone, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
everyone should have to do like 6 months working in some kind of like customer service job because Um, actually, when I tell people this, they don't believe me, but I used to be quite shy in some respects. Like when it comes to like small talk and like really like meeting people and like building relationships. But working in a bar changed all of that because you had to, right? Like your job was to make experiences for people. And I tell people all the time that having those experiences working behind a bar really, really have helped me now in my career because that is all about creating a memorable experience for someone, right?
Mm,
It's about adjusting and adapting to what the customer wants, which is kind of what marketing is as well, right? You are trying to shape something for someone so that they go away thinking like, oh, I want to do that again, or I want to buy that product again. And that kind of has all that kind of comes from that bartending. It was very difficult. Like
yeah,
I loved it and I hated it. At sometimes I
yeah,
was like, this is the worst thing in the world. Come home from a 14-hour shift and your feet hurt and you're covered in juice for some reason, and it could be really, really horrible. But at
yeah,
the same time, you also build really good friendships with people because you're all kind of in this together and you spend so much time with the same people.
yeah.
And the majority of my friends, we all met while we were bartending, and we're still friends like 8, 10 years later. So
Nice.
it's
And
definitely a worthy thing.
yeah, and in terms of you mentioned that you were quite a shy person. You didn't maybe love that element of it to begin with. Was there anything in particular or any moments you remember that helped, I suppose, shake that off a little bit and warm up to the whole, I guess, having to be a bit more extrovert when you're in that kind of setting?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. So we worked in quite an intense like party bar. So like a Friday, Saturday night, it'd be going off. There'd be loud music, like all that, and
Sounds
having a
good.
drink or two
Sounds great.
helps. And, like
Yeah,
it does help. It helps kind of loosen up. But then once you kind of get past that initial barrier, you're like, oh well, these conversations that I've had, I know that this works, and you don't always like you when you start off, you people need sometimes a little bit of social lubricant to kind of like let loose and bring out a bit more of their personality. But then as you do that more often, you don't need that so much anymore. Um, and I do remember in particular, very early on, like a few weeks into working at the bar, like one of my colleagues came up to me and was like, Nadia, like everyone really likes you. Like you're great, but just chill out a little bit. Like it's not that serious. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
and what did he mean by that?
Like I think I would get like quite stressed if things weren't like always going perfectly, and I was just kind of uptight sometimes and a bit just like hyper focused on things, and sometimes forgetting to have fun, forgetting to smile, and could be like quite snappy if someone was like asking me something and I was like focused on something else rather than just being like it's okay. Like you don't have to be so like I kind of like this like all the time. Like it's okay. like nothing. No, it's not the end of the world if someone,
Yeah,
if you drop a glass or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And how did you feel when they said that to you?
I mean, it was one of those things where up until then, I've always been a bit of a perfectionist, so taking criticism has never come easily to me, and it's something that I've still had to get better at. So kind of being called out for that, like I had to stop myself from the kind of reflexive, get defensive about it, and kind of take it as an insult and really kind of look and be like, this is not an insult. This is not someone attacking you. This is just a commentary on how you can be better, and that is fine. And kind of also having the foresight of knowing that that's going to happen a lot in your life, and you need to not take things personally all the time when people make even the slightest comment about, oh, maybe you should adjust this part of your behavior, because the vast majority of the time it isn't personal, so there's no point in getting upset about it.
Yeah. If you like thinking back, like, is there a reason why sometimes your mind would jump to that element, thinking it's personal? Is there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was pressured quite a lot to be not perfect, but like to, have good grades, kind of do everything, like be involved in sport, be involved in music, be involved in everything. So it's always been kind of this like juggling act. And when you are like one of those kids who's like, like a high achiever and like stuff like that, you can be very then sensitive to any kind of comments on that. And it's something that I still struggle with, like being perfectly honest. Like if something isn't done perfectly, I'm just like, well, why is it done perfectly? Like what has gone wrong here, and
Yeah,
what does that say about me? Even though the majority of the time it says nothing about me, and no one is thinking about what it says about me.
yeah, yeah,
It's kind of this like ego thing, which kind of ties into what I was saying about being quite like an arrogant teenager. A lot of it is just tied up in your ego, and you need to learn to relinquish that. Otherwise, you're going to be unhappy anytime anyone says anything.
yeah, yeah,
So you have to be like this, very consciously be like, this isn't about me. This isn't someone trying to bring me down. It's quite the opposite, actually. Someone's
yeah,
trying to make me better, or someone's trying to make this thing better for
yeah.
everyone involved.
And when someone, even now, when somebody talks about that or gives you kind of feedback that's maybe initially feels negative or maybe like a bit too critical or
Yeah.
whatever, how do you get over that now? Have you got steps you take? Have you got anything like tactically that if somebody else, I mean, because, geez, like, we all go through those feelings at times. Is there anything particular that you do that's effective?
Yeah, I think now I have more of an understanding of other people and their motivations. So I try to look at that first. I'm like, okay, well, why why are they saying that? Because how did this person perceive it, and think about what it means. Basically try and put myself in their shoes and think, okay, what has this point of contention that we have, how is it affecting them,
Mm,
and why would they then say that? And a lot of the time you can just chalk it up to it's in someone's personality to speak a certain way or criticize a certain thing, especially if they are criticizing or giving feedback without necessarily doing the shit sandwich thing, like, oh, this is good, but
yeah,
but this is also good,
yeah,
type of
yeah,
thing. If
yeah,
someone's just like, no, this is terrible, it's let's just do it again. You
yeah,
have to really kind of look, okay, is it just part of them and how they do things? Especially like I worked with a lot of people that are very intense workers, and they're very sort of like head down. And when you have that kind of personality, sometimes you don't necessarily think about how your feedback gets perceived by like someone in your team. Be quite difficult. So I try to firstly look at that. And a lot of the time, like, I'm definitely not perfect. I tend to, I guess, like overreact initially, very briefly. And then I'm like, once that passes, I'm like, oh, it's really not that big of a deal. Like,
yeah,
I just needed to have a little moment of, like thinking that the world was ending, but now everything's fine.
yeah. And I think as well, it is really normal. I mean, I wasn't an overachiever by any stretch. I was probably the exact opposite of that. Definitely an underachiever when I was at school and into higher education and stuff. So I probably didn't have the same pressures on me in that sense to like perform all the time. I get, well, but I probably equally put that on myself as well at times. But I find that certainly historically, even over up until the last kind of year or so, I did, when I got feedback, I found it very difficult to take a step back and actually process it. I usually go to 100, get really angry, really emotional,
Yeah. Yeah.
handle it completely the wrong way, and then simmer down. And it's like, fuck, and I actually think back a lot of circumstances, a lot of events that went on, and I'm like, geez, I really should have and wish I'd handled that differently with now experience, maturity, or whatever. And I find that speaking to people, I've got a kind of business slash kind of mindset coach that I speak to every week or every couple of weeks. That's helped me massively. Like that's been huge for me. But also I've got other people in my life, like mentors or friends, whatever, that I do share stuff with, and to try and get other perspective before I hit 100.
Mm,
And don't
mm.
get me wrong, sometimes I still go to 100, but it's maybe because it's warranted. But more often than not, I do take a step back and evaluate the bigger picture. Like you're saying, you're kind of like, what was somebody else's motive, maybe, or like,
Yeah.
did they actually mean it the way that I'm seeing it, or I'm reading an email and I'm thinking you're calling me an asshole here, but then actually somebody else reads it completely differently,
Yeah.
and
Talking to other
it's,
people
and it's
is
the same
so
words.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's the thing, and so I think you're totally, you're certainly not alone in that sense, and I definitely think, yeah, like finding those people that you can lean on in those times, because as well they'll then come back to you because you go through the same thing, so you've got that mutual partnership in that sense. And in terms of did you have any other like early jobs? So you've had, obviously you worked in the dining hall at uni, and then the bar when you got back to London. Anything else and any other funny stories that
I
shaped where
mean,
you are now?
the funny stories from the bar are endless. They're absolutely endless. Like there's just so many like crazy things that happened, and a lot
But
of them.
probably just be careful which ones you say though just now.
Yeah, no, there's a few. I mean, I have a permanent scar from one time when I was dancing on top of the bar, fell off of the bar and onto like the spout of a bottle, and it
Jeez.
went like right into the side of my hip. So I was
Oh,
impaled. I impaled myself
oh
on
wow.
the bottle in the bar.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So I don't know what the moral lesson from that was at all, except for the fact that,
Dancing a bar maybe? I don't
maybe,
know.
maybe make sure that you're not standing on top of a slippy mat on top of a bar if you
Yeah.
are dancing on it.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
would
yeah,
never
yeah,
tell
fair.
anyone not to dance on top of a bar.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Like we all love dancing on bars.
Yeah. And I guess it really teaches you a lot about working with different personalities as well.
Yeah.
Working in bar, because especially if you work in like a team of like, let's say 10, 12, which sometimes we do, it is very unlikely that you're all going to have personalities that get on, right? Like it's really, really unlikely that no one is going to have infighting or conflict or something like that. So it really does teach you how to manage that as well, because if you are working in a team like that, there's no space for passive aggressiveness like there might be in an office. Like if there's conflict, it is immediately palpable and there, and you have to deal with it immediately.
Yeah.
Especially if there's like some drinks involved. People tend to get quite hyper. So
Sure.
lots of arguments had, and sort of watching things escalate in a way that sometimes when I see that happening in kind of a more like corporate setting, I'm like, right, I've been here before. It's just no one was throwing ice at the other person this time.
Yeah. And I think though, what you mentioned at the start, like people should have to do some type of hospitality. I'm actually a big believer in that as well. I worked in hospitality for years, and it's so good. I think like the exposure to good fun, complete assholes, and everything in
Yeah.
between. Like I think it's like it's such a good grounding, and I think like you can you learn so much. You've got to think on your feet. You're always busy. There's always something to do. There's always something going wrong. There's always somebody calling in sick, and you're having to just get on with it because work needs done. You just got to crack on, and I think it's that pace of work that's really important. And I think I always find it, and like we have, a team of like 22, 23 here at ORRJO, and I think we, and as I say, I can often tell who have been exposed to like in hospitality environments or
Mhm.
those that have maybe just not been, and I think it can be a really good grounding for people.
For sure. It's the sense of urgency that it
Yeah, yeah,
cultivates. That really,
100%.
because we have a saying, which I'm sure is still a thing, is but if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean.
All
So
right.
like if you are just chilling, it's
Yeah,
like,
that's
well,
an
why
odd
are you
joke,
just
guys.
standing there? It's like, why are you just standing there? Like something needs to be cleaned, which if you're working in a bar, something always needs to be
Yeah,
cleaned.
yeah,
So it
no,
is
fair enough.
really like just going nonstop.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what was the kind of next? Was that when you start? Did you after the bar? Was that when you kind of moved into marketing at the
Yeah,
beginning?
so
Or
it it didn't happen the way I had obviously envisioned it because so I
never
finished
does, never
uni,
does.
never does, but this was quite catastrophic because I finished uni in 2019, came back to London, was bartending throughout that summer just to make ends meet while I figured it out, and then when I was ready to find a different job and move out of the industry, COVID happened, so everything just
Yeah,
stopped, and so it kind of put, at least a year I was unable to do anything, but I was on furlough, and when we were not on furlough I was going in and out of working in the bar again, obviously had to make ends meet. So the way that I transitioned was I started doing some copy editing and writing for the bar that I was working at. Because I noticed, I was like, oh, there's a couple typos in the menu, like a few things like that. And I just asked, I was like, can I do this for free? Like, I'll do it for free. It's just that this
brilliant.
is, can I put it on my CV? Because this is the kind of thing I want to get into, like editing, writing, journalism, that kind of thing. And my operations manager was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, free
Yeah,
work? Of
no
course.
brainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I started doing that. And then when we started to slowly come out of lockdown, it was very slow going. So I had to do 300 job applications before I got my first job. Um, and part of that was because of COVID and no one was hiring. It was also because I was trying to go into the journalism newspaper industry, which is just so difficult to get a job in, also very poorly paid. And I didn't really have a lot of experience because I just finished uni and I worked on my university newspaper, but like the Independent doesn't want that. They want 5 years of experience,
No,
you know?
sure.
Uh, so then I kind of accidentally went into marketing because I realized that the skill set that I'd cultivated from my degree and through
Yeah,
doing that was the same as a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of entry level marketing jobs. So I tweaked my CV a little bit and then the phone started ringing and then I started getting interviews and stuff and I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually all right. Like this is creative, it involves writing, it involves editing. Like I could actually do this. And then I got my first job 2 years after graduating actually, so it took a while, and that was as a marketing assistant for a recruitment firm in London.
Nice. And so, obviously, there'll be lots of people in similar shoes to you that unfortunately were hit by COVID, um, and the plans that you, I'm sure, had were almost torpedoed completely out the, and no, you would never have known what's coming next type of thing. Because, you know, how are you feeling in that moment? So you've done, 300 odd applications, probably, and I appreciate you hadn't yet pivoted to your new idea of marketing stuff. Like, what was kind of going through your mind at that point?
It was it was really tough. It was really, really tough. Like just looking, so I had a spreadsheet of where I'd applied, had they responded, rejection, interview, whatever, and it was just full of red. It was just full of red. It was like
I love how
rejection.
organised you are, though. Fair play.
Yeah, I mean, I love a spreadsheet. I still do. But it was really, really tough. And also, you try to leverage the network that you have, but mine was very limited. I didn't really know a lot of people who, could help out. And when I did, it fell through and stuff. And so it was a lot of resilience needed at the time, and trying to be innovative and trying to do things that might help. So one thing I did do kind of during that COVID era was with a couple of old friends, we started a like Instagram website, kind of news platform just to talk about stuff going on in the news that we were interested in. Um, and so I taught myself SEO through that. I taught myself how to build a WordPress site.
Nice.
Taught myself about kind of like Instagram marketing and exposure and things like that. And there was no money, of course. It was just
Mm.
purely a passion project. But I ended up teaching myself skills through doing that
Yeah.
that I could then use. And to be honest, if COVID hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been able to do that
Yeah.
because it was only because I had that downtime to be able to do that. So I really sympathize with people that are trying to, get out of like working an hourly job and trying to start their corporate careers, because it is so difficult. It is so difficult, and I haven't seen it get easier for people in the years since then.
And to be honest, so I'm a good bit older than you, but I would say there's always been challenges, right? I think even, no, I mean, COVID was a particular, like, I mean, a behemoth that nobody could have planned or foreseen, right? But apart from the governments, maybe. But anyway, we won't go into that. But I think when it comes to like challenges and stuff, especially when you're a kind of new grad and you're trying to kind of create an opportunity and stuff. I think it is a very normal thing. I think loads of people will be in the same. I was in that position as well. I remember, and I've lots of friends that were in very similar positions. So I think that part is pretty normal. What I really love though about what you did, and I think there's a huge lesson in here for people that are struggling right now, is that you diversified your skill set. You built new skills that you didn't have. You didn't expect to get paid for all of it because you played the longer game. And I think that's something that people should be doing now in terms of whether it be developing, whether it be reading books, listening to podcasts, you know, researching, watching YouTube tutorials on SEO or whatever it might be, to add more strings to your bow.
For sure.
And the
And
more
in some way,
experience
it
you've
kind
got.
of sucks that you have to do that. You know,
But
it's like this
see,
degree
I don't
that
know.
I did.
I don't think you. I don't think it. I don't think it is. I think it's what separates people from really making it
Yeah, true.
and stumbling into stuff, because you're making it happen by adding those skills to your resume or CV or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're waiting and expecting a result because you've maybe studied a certain thing or whatever, then your life's going to kind of happen to you, if that makes sense, versus you happening to life in that kind of way. So like, I'm a big believer, you've got to take control. You've got to grab it by the scruff of the neck and take the control, good or bad. And I think there's more upside potential if you have got those skills and you're able to add more things to it and talk about stuff. And when you're in interviews or you're sending a cover letter or a CV, that you can go into depth about what you've done and why you've done it and the result of that. Because that's what we recruit, as I say, a lot of graduates that come in, or a lot of people that come in are graduates, sorry, I should say. And we've got kind of 22, 23 people. And we're probably hiring maybe one or two, give or take, a month, or certainly, a quarter. And that's what I look for. I look for like what are people doing about it? What else have they learned out with the conventional things you maybe do at university? Because also as well, and I was a couple of weeks ago, I was invited back to the uni I went to speak. And what was interesting was like they all agreed, and one of my points was that once someone's graduated, and if not before it, if I'm honest with you, what they've learned is out of date.
Yeah.
Especially in sales and marketing, that changes and evolves so quickly with social media, etc. So like if you're not adding those additional skills, you'll be left behind anyway.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
I do really I love that you've done that. So can you tell us a little bit about your current role then?
Yes. So at Wingback, we are a small team. There's only just about 8 of us, and so we create really sort of sustainable everyday luxury products. So we've got a range of stationery, wallets and small leather goods, a few flasks and key carries. So it's quite a small range of products, but the ethos behind the brand is everything is built to last forever, theoretically. So, because we're in this age now of, we're moving out of obsession with fast fashion. We're moving out of kind of non-conscious purchases. And so everything Wingback is made to kind of go on this journey of life with you. So our founder is a big believer in that the value of something actually appreciates over time rather than depreciates, because it starts to carry memories and it starts to kind of have this life of its own. So when you buy one of our pens, especially like in brass or whatever, I should have one lying around, but I don't.
There's a great opportunity to plug that there.
No, this is really poor planning on my part. I just have like a Bic lying around, which is not the same thing.
No, definitely don't show that. No.
The brass pen will develop a patina over time, so it'll kind of, like darken and deepen, and then like you drop it, and it'll like have like a little scuff or something. But then that kind of adds to the whole like, oh
Yeah.
well, I've had this pen for how many years or whatever. So that's what Wingback is, and as head of marketing, kind of drive the strategy around getting us in front of as many people as possible and getting the name out there. It's new for me because up until this role, I'd been in the B2B area.
Yeah,
So now I'm in the more D2C really. So that's been a big adjustment, but it's a lot more creative
sure.
than B2B. There's a lot more opportunities. It's stressful, but in a different way because it's like, oh, we gotta make sure that we're hitting, certain numbers or whatever. But I'm really enjoying it, and it's very easy. Well, it's a lot easier to market a product that is good that you believe in.
Yeah,
And I do with these things. The first time I held one of the pen, I was like, yeah, this is a great pen. Like, of course, people would like this, and
yeah,
so that makes my job a lot easier, knowing that these are good things for people.
yeah,
So I don't feel like, oh, you're trying to shell something, terrible to people or like rip
yeah,
people off or anything like that, because that's a
yeah.
horrible position to be in.
And what's been the biggest challenge since you've been in the role?
Oh God, I guess trying to keep on top of everything because we're a small marketing team. It's just myself, and we've got kind of a network of freelancers, and as we're a startup, everyone kind of helps out with everything right
Of course.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
But for the most part, like, I need to be the one keeping on top of trends in the space, the newest thing introduced by Google Ads. Like, if it's not PMax, it's ZMax or something like that. And just making sure that we are trying to capitalize on everything that we can. I think that's the biggest struggle, and I think a lot of marketers resonate with that. Is just feeling like you kind of always inevitably feel like you're one step behind with marketing because there's something new every day.
Yeah,
And by the time you have the resources to like do this new TikTok trend, it is out of date.
it's gone.
Exactly
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
So that's definitely the biggest one, is just trying to stay on top of everything. And I don't think any truthful marketer will say that they're 100% on top of everything all the time.
No,
There's
no,
just
but
there's
it's
just no
bullshit if
way.
they do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Loads of people will say it, but it's fucking bullshit. So yeah, and obviously, like, it's always difficult to kind of stay on top. Is there anything tactically that you do to try to stay ahead of the game as much as you can?
Yeah, so I read a lot. I still try and read a lot, and whether that's through like marketing books or just books about like strategy and leadership in general, I make sure that I do that because even if like ideas aren't necessarily like changing all the time. Like, the ideas behind something might stay the same, it's just the application might be different. So I try to make sure that I've always got like kind of a steady stream of like new like ideas and perspectives coming into my head to kind of make me feel like, okay, well, I'm not just sticking to this one strategy I read by some guy 10 years ago type of thing, and hearing different things all the time. And I guess when you work in kind of the social media space, you're never really off, right? Because even if you're on your personal accounts, like, you're kind of thinking like, oh,
Yeah,
can I use this for my own work, like something else? So in one way that kind of helps because you are always kind of being hit with new opportunities for marketing and advertising and seeing things because we can't escape advertising. It's everywhere all the time. But that's a double-edged sword, right? Because then it's like you never really switch off. And yeah, so that's for me. I know that reading isn't for everyone. So like podcasts as well help. I do a lot of audiobooks as well because I do
yeah,
them while I'm
nice.
in the gym. So it's just another way to get more content.
Yeah. And is there any off the top of your mind that you recommend?
Oh God, my list of book recommendations is so long. But a big one for me is this guy called Cal Newport, and he is a professor somewhere, and he wrote this book called Deep Work, which
Okay.
isn't about any particular industry, but it is about basically trying to be as efficient as you can in this age where we are distracted and there's so much kind
Things
of
going
digital
on. Yeah.
nonsense going on, and how to really like buckle down and get the things that you need to get done. That was absolutely pivotal for me because it can apply to any kind of industry. It's like no matter what you're doing, these methods of kind of segmenting your brain a little bit and putting in little steps to make sure that when you are done for the day, you are done. But when
Yeah.
you are on, you're really, really on and getting things kind of done. So that is a book that I always recommend to people. As well as that, I really enjoyed the High Performance podcast,
Oh, yeah.
which I'm
Nice.
sure you've heard of. So these
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
guys who used
Listen
to
to a
work
lot.
in sports, because I Personally, I'm really interested in F1, and they do a lot of interviews with F1 people, so I'm always listening to those. And I love listening to people about like their high performance in their specific niche, because it could be anything. So that's a podcast I really like
Yeah.
as well.
Nice. And obviously, you're quite early on in your career, and you're obviously doing very, very well. Is there any impactful advice that you have been given over the last few years that really helped, and just it just resonates a lot with you?
Yeah, I think especially in marketing, but really for anything, the best piece of advice I got was you have to be okay with uncertainty and not knowing how things are going to turn out, which is very difficult for me because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm very much so a planner. Like my if it's not in my Google Calendar, like it doesn't happen. Like every day, like my to-do list is all really organized. But if you are not okay with not knowing how things are going to turn out, you will never be happy because there is just no way to know things. So you have to really sit in that emotion of knowing like I don't know what's going to happen, and that is okay, and kind of let that emotion wash over you and really like be comfortable with it. Otherwise, like it's not good for your health really to like be stressing out about things all the time and kind of always worrying about like, oh, how is this going to turn out, how is that going to turn out, especially worrying about things that either haven't happened yet or might not even happen.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
so I think I try to come back to that a lot, especially when I'm like, I don't know how this campaign is gonna work out or
yeah,
anything like that, to be like, it's okay that you don't know
yeah.
that. Like you
And
just
how do you like, I guess, process that? Then how do you deal with that? Because I agree, by the way, like there's definitely an element of you have to be okay with that. But how do you personally deal with it?
the biggest thing for me, I mean, this is not something profound, but the biggest thing for me to keep my mental state kind of stable is exercise. That's a
Yeah,
non-negotiable for me. And I've recognized this pattern in myself now where if it's been a few days and I know that I'm feeling a little bit anxious or a little bit depressed and just kind of like not great, the first thing I do is when was the last time you went to the gym?
yeah.
And the answer is usually, well, it's been like 3 days, 4 days, or whatever. And so that's the first thing
That's
that I
where
do.
you're triggering stand. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so and I know that might not necessarily be for everyone. I just know that for me personally, that is a massive thing. So for me, it's non-negotiable to get in the gym or get outside for a walk like as much as I can. And that really kind of helps
yeah.
regulate my thoughts a lot of the time. Like,
I'd agree. I think some form, like not everything's for everyone. So like the gym might not be for some people or whatever, but some form of movement is
mm,
like I think critical. I think whether it's just even going out a walk, even with an audio bit, or even nothing on, but just actually just getting moving,
yeah.
starts to allow you to process things, doesn't it? I think I find I do my best thinking when I'm walking, and
Of
that's when I
course,
get loads of ideas. I start
100%.
sending loads of Slack to the Slack thing messages to the team, which they can always usually tell when I'm out a walk.
Yeah, no one gets
Ding,
their like,
ding, 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 ding.
no one gets their like world-changing idea when they're just like locked in a cubicle, right? Like it's
No, no, no,
always
no.
when you are out doing things. And I think it's Aristotle that said this. He didn't say these words, but something along these lines, like when the body moves, the mind grooves.
Ah,
Aristotle did not say
you
those words,
definitely didn't say grooves,
but
but
he said something along those lines
yeah,
about how like that's when the mind really gets going when you are
yeah,
doing those things. So for me, I try to go first thing in the morning because then it's also like set me up for the day. Like
yeah,
I
yeah. It
feel
feels
good
good.
then. I'm like, oh, I've already
Totally,
done something with my day.
totally.
It's fine. I didn't go this morning, but I will later.
Yeah, and so obviously, you had a bit of a tough time, like many others, around the kind of COVID time and try to find your feet and get going, I guess, in your career. Is there any advice you'd give someone that's kind of starting out? Hopefully, they don't go through like a COVID experience.
Mm.
Again, fingers and toes crossed. But is there anything that you think that really helps you that you would give? Maybe you also do give to maybe friends or family that are maybe kind of starting out now. Anything that you would recommend?
Well, firstly, the advice I always say to anyone is drink more water because we don't. So always drink more water. Um, but actually, something that I did that I think has really been a really good long-term investment is, and calling it investment is kind of weird, but really putting time and effort into your friendships and your relationships that you have. Because my support network that I have built over the last few years has been invaluable to me. Just in terms of like being able to call a friend or being able to make sure that like, I can always like go to my mum if I need advice about something, but not just in terms of like the kind of emotional support, but also just like having a network is helpful. Like I feel like I always know someone that can help me out with something. Whether it's like, oh, I need a photographer, I need an event space, um I need someone who can do something, kind of thing. Like I spend a lot of time kind of making sure that I cultivated friendships with people that I wanted to be around, who really kind of like support me, and who I can then support in return. So I think people tend to get quite, like we tunnel vision on things, and it's very easy, especially now because everyone is so busy all the time, to neglect your friendships. But I tried very consciously not to do that. So, even if it's the temptation to cancel on plans or something is really strong, and I get it. Like life is hard and tiring, and it's can be an effort to go out sometimes and see people or go to someone's house, but it's been really fruitful for me to maintain that. So I would say, if you have people in your life that you think like are that they're really there for you and they contribute to your well-being, and you get like quality time spending with them. Sorry, phone's ringing.
It's probably one of your friends.
No, it's my boyfriend actually. Basically, I'm just like, actually, no, you don't count. I'm just not maintaining that right
Not that
now.
important thing.
Don't neglect those friendships. It can be hard, but I do have a couple of friends now who are like, I'm a lot older, and I realize that I don't really have a big circle of friends. And it can be really difficult to make friends the older that you get. So I find myself very, very lucky to have quite a lot of really good friends. Like not people who are just kind of there, some people who I can really talk to, and connect with. So I'd say invest in the relationships that you have. It'd be worth it in the long term.
And look, I'd completely agree. So friendship one, absolutely. I've always been a big advocate for that, and I've always kind of tried to make time, especially even when you're like you say, when you're tired, you're just like, oh God, the last thing I want to do. But then you're like, no, we've had plans in the diet. We're going for a meeting for a couple of beers or whatever it might be. So it's doing that. But also as well, from a network perspective, that's something that's been hugely valuable to me, and I know others. And I've been kind of in sales and marketing for like 15 plus years now, and the business that I've built has largely been through the network and through referrals and
For sure,
recommendations, or
yeah.
people I've worked with before or what have you. And you hear that a lot with businesses, certainly at the beginning. And I think that's something I'd hugely recommend people make that effort to connect with people, but for it to be authentic though, not just to do it to try and get something or get
Yeah.
something in return, but actually like be open to helping people. Like there's, and this isn't me trying to blow smoke, but one of the things I've tried to do throughout my whole career is support people, especially that are like coming kind of after me, maybe a bit younger, whatever it might be. And I always try to, whether it's give them time to like chat through things or support maybe if they're going through a tougher time or whatever it might be. And that, one, it's the right thing to do, and it feels good giving. And I'm not doing it with the thought of getting something in return. But the reality is, over time, the more you do that, things do just come back to you. It's just the way the world works. So
For
I think
sure.
that there's a really good opportunity there for people just to be kind and be good to other people, and build those strong relationships, whether it be friendship, professionally, or whatever it might be. And now that you're in a leadership role, are there any particular like qualities or attributes you feel that are really important to being a strong leader?
Yeah, I mean, being a leader is so difficult, right? Because you have to be you you don't magically become confident in everything you do, right? You're not automatically like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing all the time now. It just doesn't happen, right? But you kind of have to appear like that, sometimes to people, and absorb a lot of the impact of stress, so it doesn't filter down to your team. Which is something I learned in my last job. I had a team of three reporting underneath me, and I learned very early on that like if they saw me stressed or worried about things, then they would be too, and then that would kind of, then they would be affected. The work would be affected, and it just wouldn't be good. So, kind of learning that, but then also not hiding things from them, just kind of being upfront about like, if we're having a bad month or whatever, just being very clear, like things aren't great right now, but that is okay. And you don't need to freak out about it or whatever. And I really dislike it when companies gatekeep things from their employees, like the leadership team kind of like keeps things quiet because we're not dumb. You can tell, right? Like if something's not going right, if a deal's fallen through, like your team will be able to tell that something's afoot,
Yeah.
So there's no point trying to keep it from them, and it just builds this kind of ice between you. Then it's like, well, like I don't know what's going on. I'm not important enough to know, like things like that. So trying to strike that balance
Yeah.
between, you know, being like truthful and authentic with your team, but also, making sure that you kind of absorb like the brunt of what that means for the team and work on it rather than letting it trickle down to them is a really like difficult balance to strike, I think. And additionally, I think this is really difficult because especially if you are a leader, it's kind of inevitable. You develop a little bit of an ego about what you're doing because you know that if you're an expert in your field, there is a little bit of hubris that comes with that. But being able to change and adapt if your views are out of date or if something that you're doing isn't working, you need to be able to do that, especially right now in marketing. Everything moves so quickly, everything changes all the time. And being able to step back and be like, okay, what I had initially conceived of is not applicable anymore, it's not working anymore, is very difficult, right? Because especially if it's something that you've built from the ground up, if it's your baby, then kind of admitting that it's not perfect anymore can be very, very difficult. But
Yeah. And I think, I mean, what I would say, so as I say, I've kind of been around, I guess, some pretty senior role. I've been in some senior roles in big companies, and I've been around some amazing leaders, and some that maybe not quite so good. Um, and what I would say, like, so few people know exactly what they're doing, and I would say almost no one does, to be honest with you, unless they've done specifically that thing before, and they've kind of got like a load of reps in that field or whatever it might be. But the most part, and I'm talking about some people that have been in business for 20, 30, 40 years, largely are winging elements of what they do. And that's not bad, it's just is what it is. And I think, like, I mean, obviously, I started my company about 3.5-ish years ago. There's just, and I probably had good groundings in the sales, marketing, and leadership, but I hadn't run a business this size before, like that I was responsible completely for with no funding or no backing or whatever. So
terrifying.
there's loads of stuff that you don't have, you've just not done before, and and I totally agree. One of the things that I think my team probably respect, I think, without speaking for them, is that we're transparent, and that is, I do share when it's going well and when it's not going so well, and what we're doing about it. Because like they're on the journey as much as I'm on the journey, if that makes sense. And obviously, I hope that to build up a strong team that's with us for a long, long time. And we're fortunate we've got very, very low attrition, touch wood, and we've got an amazing team. And like so, the more aligned and understood they are about the business and where we are through the good times and the scary times, then the more that they can kind of be in it together. And we've had some tough times even over the last maybe 4 6 months.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to the team about it, what was amazing was like everybody was like rolling the sleeves up and right, cool, what are we going to do about it? And that's when you've built a unit that are in it together, and that's, to be honest, is special. And you only get that with honesty, transparency, and stuff. So I think that's really, really good. And is there anything from your side that you do to kind of prepare yourself for some of the tougher times, or like things that have maybe come your way that have been a bit more difficult? Is there anything you've done specifically that's prepared you?
Well, first of all, props to you for doing that because I'm not a business owner, but I can only imagine how difficult and stressful
You
it
see the
is.
grey hairs, right?
I've got a couple. They're coming
Yeah,
through as
yeah.
well.
These don't lie, right?
Like when people's livelihoods depend on you, like that is just a level of stress that, like, I mean, I probably will have at some point someday when I launch my own business, but I can't imagine. So well done to you for dealing with that. I guess the thing about tough times though is that like you don't know when they're coming, right? It's just like they hit you all of a sudden. You're like, ah, fuck. Like now I'm in this. So I guess like you just have to do everything that you can to insulate yourself so that when things do go tits up, for a lack of a better phrase, like you are as prepared as you can, and that comes from resilience building and upskilling during the quiet during the good times,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
when things are good, conserve your cash and upskill your team so that when things are bad, like it's not, oh well, how are we going to keep the
Weather the
lights on?
storm. No, I think that's
Yeah.
a great shout. And it's a really good way to put it. And so for you personally, like, what drives you?
I mean, I've always I've always kind of had this desire to be the best at what I'm doing, whatever that is. And sometimes that's to a fault, right? Because it's meant that sometimes I haven't necessarily tried something new because I'm afraid of not being good at it or looking like an idiot. But part of it has been, from a childhood thing and like kind of having those like familial pressures on me to perform. But I internalized that a long time ago, and now it is truly just like I want to do things for myself. And for me, I mean, money is always a driver. Like, not gonna lie, it's a driver for many people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But for me, is growing up, I did not ever feel 100% secure in terms of where I was, and I felt often like my life was at the whims of other people. I was depending on other people, which when you're a kid, of course it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But I recognized that feeling and I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that, as a teenager, I didn't have a job, so I didn't have my own money. I had to like go and
yeah,
ask my mom for things and things like that. I didn't like that when I was renting a flat, I didn't like that that could be pulled out if the landlord decided to sell the house.
yeah.
I didn't like that. So I have everything that I've done has been in this effort to try and then secure my own foundation so that I didn't have to worry about those things. And the biggest achievement for me through all of that has been through buying my flat that I now live in, and that was
Congrats.
kind of what my goal had been since I was 18, was feeling like I had one place that this is my own and no one can take it from me. I mean,
Yeah.
unless
No, 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 I get you.
yeah, and being able to do it the way that I wanted to and not having to really like worry, oh well, what if someone else does this, what if someone else does that. So for me it's just about being secure and kind of this like hyper independence about like
Yeah,
the being then comfortable knowing that everything's okay because you're not depending on other people, which I know can kind of spiral into, well, like you have to depend on other people and it's not good to be so hyper independent. And I get that as well. So that's not to say that this mindset doesn't come with some pitfalls, I guess. But for me, that's what's been the biggest driver, is wanting that security and stability for myself.
and is there anything, like, again, with the benefit now of hindsight, is there anything you would change, kind of looking back, and you would do differently?
I mean, it's a cliche to say no, right? Because every mistake has been like a learning experience,
Yeah,
and stuff
uh,
like that.
opportunity to
I
grow.
guess looking back, I'd drink more water, of course,
Yeah,
obviously. Um, I guess, and yeah, not just sweat about the small things so much, and understanding that this is going to pass, and it's not the end of the world. And I still struggle with that, right? If I'm like arguing with a friend, sometimes it feels like the world is ending. I'm like, this is so insignificant in the
yeah,
grand scheme of things. And actually, COVID helped with that because everything came to such a standstill. It did kind of put into perspective like some more important things and building memories with people and things like that. I guess the one the one thing is I maybe wouldn't have moved out of my mom's flat so quickly after graduating uni, because you know how it is, like it's difficult to live with parents once you're an
yeah.
adult, and I was so keen to have my own place, but probably shouldn't have done that. I should have stayed with her and maybe like built up a few months worth of emergency cash before moving out.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's clearly all worked out well. But I love that quote. It's the what this too shall pass. It's so relevant, isn't it? It's just when you're going through tough times, in particular. And outside of work, is there any hobbies? Or obviously, I know you love going to the gym and stuff. Is there anything else in particular you do?
Yeah, I big music fan and have been. So I play the piano since I was like 4 or 5,
Oh,
and
amazing.
so still do. I played a little bit of the
To be
guitar
honest,
as
you sound
well.
like a bit of a child prodigy. So you play the piano, you've passed all your exams with flying colours, even though you were giving all your teachers shit. You cruised to university, and now you've got a great job.
The
So
thing is, though,
I'm
none of
struggling
these.
here to relate.
Yeah,
It's-
but, like, I'm not good at the piano. Like, if you hear me play,
it's,
like,
uh,
I'm
all
not
right,
amazing at it. Like,
okay, so you can keys.
I can play like some of your classic pieces, but like, I make visible mistakes when I play. This
Okay,
is the thing. It's one of
okay,
those things. Like, I've never been like, I was never gonna play at Carnegie Hall or anything like that. It was
okay.
something that I did. I gave it up a little bit as a teenager, but it is one of those things that I do, and I collect music a lot. So I've got a collection of
Nice.
about 300 vinyls.
Wow.
A lot of them I inherited, but I just started collecting them as well. So I love to do that. I like to play music. I like to listen to it. I like to collect it. And I love gigs. I love going to gigs. So
Nice.
that's where all my
Nice.
money goes.
Nice. Actually, Sean, who's listening, our marketing manager, is a huge gig fan. I think he's got every band tee there is, isn't it?
Seeing Stevie
um,
Wonder this summer, which is very exciting.
and in terms of self-development, obviously you talked a lot about it, and it's something clearly very, very close to you. Any other recommendations that you've not talked about that you would, recommend for somebody else that's kind of coming through?
So this is a weird one, but I think finding something that you are not good at naturally and something that maybe you're not even very interested in and start doing that. So I recently started playing a little bit of chess. I'm not good at it at all, and I don't think I'm naturally good at it at all either. But after kind of playing a little bit here and there and kind of reading about it, it's taught me a lot about my own thought patterns and my own strategic thinking and pointed out the flaws in it because then you lose and you're like, well, why did you lose? Because you didn't see this thing and whatever. And that has been quite eye-opening for me.
Nice.
So I'm not saying it has to be this, but that's something recently that I think like, oh, this is probably quite helpful actually because I'm recognizing like the traps that I fall into constantly. Why do you do that? And then that definitely translates to life in some grand way, I'm sure.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, find something that you're not good at and try it. You might learn something.
Nice, love that. And look, Nadia, I really appreciate your time today. It was really nice to meet you and to speak to you and learn a little bit more about your journey, which has been amazing. Can you tell me what the website is for the company, just so for anyone listening can jump on and maybe buy some stuff? We will definitely buy some stuff. So, Sean, if we can get the website locked in, and we'll get some stuff ordered today.
Yeah, of course. So it's wingback.co.uk. Everything can be personalized and customized. So if you need gifts for people, it's a really good option as well.
Maybe get some ORRJO swag ordered for the team. So yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds brilliant.
personalized wallets with everyone's names on them. It's good stuff.
Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. Look, thank you so much. We'll stay connected on LinkedIn and stuff as well, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been really fun.